Hello and welcome to my latest video lesson, this time focusing on a question on the AQA exam board for Jekyll and Hyde. So tackling the question AQA, and the topic is Hyde as violent. Before I continue with that, just a reminder to hop on over to mrhonline.co.uk if you haven't done so already, where you'll find many more videos on a wide range of topics covering everything you'll need to do extremely well in your GCSE English language and literature. Right, let's crack on. So before getting down to the nitty-gritty of the question, it comes up on paper 1 alongside your Shakespeare question, and it follows the same layout. So you get an extract and you have to answer a question. It's a 30-mark question. These are the assessment objectives for paper 1. The AO4 you'll see I've highlighted there, or I've arrowed it. That's for spelling, punctuation and grammar. Now that's added on to your 30 marks for the Shakespeare question, but not for this question. Okay, so this question we're looking at AO1, 2 and 3. That's 12 and 6 marks accordingly. Just a reminder, press pause whenever you need to, take notes. There's quite a lot of writing in this, so you will need to pause the video and jot down any important points as they come up. Okay, so what does the question look like? So this is what it looks like. And so you sat there in exam. You've got the exam paper open in front of you. What's the first thing you do? Well, I know it sounds logical, but you read the bit at the top in bold. But it's funny how many students of mine just read the question straight away first. You're constantly looking for any clues or hints that you can get as to where this extract is coming from, because it could come from anywhere in the novel. So that bit at the top gives you the context from within the novel where this extract comes. So I'll read it. So read the following extract from chapter 4, then answer the question that follows. In this extract, the maid is describing the murderer of Carew as Mr. Hyde. So that's the first thing you do, is to read this writing in bold, as it will give you the context for the extract that should read within the novella. The next thing you do is you skip down below the extract and you read the actual question, because it's important to know what you're looking for as you read the extract for the first time. So starting with this extract, explain how Stevenson presents Mr. Hyde as violent in the novella. And there's 2 bullet points, equally weighted: how Stevenson presents Mr. Hyde in the extract and how he presents him in the wider novel. Every single thing you write must relate to Mr. Hyde and his representation, and Mr. Hyde as violent. Yeah, I've covered up a few words there, never mind. The second thing you need to do is to read the question, underlining or highlighting the key words. So I'd highlight or underline Mr. Hyde as violent. So I know I need to, in the extract, when I'm reading the extract, focus on anything that comes up in relation to Hyde as violent. Okay, so you've got 52 minutes to answer this question in the exam. You need to be jotting down some notes, writing a plan. 5-6 minutes for a plan is important, so you can structure your ideas, structure your thoughts. Okay, so I've just jotted down some ideas about this question, about Mr. Hyde himself. So he embodies pure evil. He represents Jekyll's alter ego. He acts on impulse. Is described as short, hairy, and ugly. Makes people feel uncomfortable. From young girls to elderly gentlemen, he doesn't care who he crosses. Tramples calmly over a young girl. Brutally murders Carew. Roams the streets after dark, has links to Darwin's theory of evolution, lives in Soho, an impoverished part of London, but has a plushly decorated interior. Links to the theme of duality, I could add in there. So, excuse my scrawl, but I just sat there for a couple of minutes with this extract, and I highlighted some key points and annotated it. So you can see that. If you zoom in, you might be able to read it. Good luck with that. But these are the kind of things that you need to do. In the exam, do this. This is just an example of how you go about revising this exam question. You should annotate the exam question in the exam as well, but maybe not to the extent I have done here. But certainly highlight or underline the keywords in the question, plus anything from the extract that stands out as relevant to that specific question. So I've just taken those points there and I've just jotted them down a list. Now, you wouldn't necessarily do this in the exam, but because you've got it on the paper and you've annotated it. But just for the purposes of this video, I've jotted them down. So, great flame of anger. Well, that's a metaphor, and it depicts the unpredictable danger of Hyde, a flame as fire. You can't predict, if you read about or you watch this footage from forest fires and how unpredictable their movement is and how dangerous they are. Broke out of all bounds. Now, broke out is repeated in the extract, but broke out of all bounds I've focused on because it suggests that he maybe was like a caged animal. And that links to what Jekyll says about Hyde. When he came out, my devil had long been caged, he came out roaring. So it has links to other areas within the novella. Continuing animalistic imagery with ape-like fury, with links to Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin's theory of evolution was published 27 years prior to the publication of this novella in 1886, which kind of put forward the idea that we all evolved from animals. And so we've got lots of links with Hyde and troglodytes and the cave dwellers and so on. And also ape-like fury here and clubbed. A violent verb adding to links to a lack of development. Hyde's more primitive nature, troglodytic. Like a madman, another simile painting Hyde as out of control and dangerous. Storm of blows, metaphor revealing the sheer power of Hyde. Audibly shattered, like a sound technique here. Onomatopoeic language reflecting the brutality of the attack. Incredibly mangled. That's very graphic imagery. Audibly shattered, incredibly mangled. Adds to this image. And then the word horror kind of links to elements of the Gothic, which was very popular at the time. Elsewhere in the novella, Stevenson's use of animal imagery to describe Hyde, trampled calmly, or something abnormal in the very essence of this creature, or like some damned juggernaut. Hyde also suffers comparisons with the devil, black sneering coolness like Satan, or my devil had long been caged, he came out roaring. So here's the actual question. I've just highlighted it, or isolated it even. Starting with this extract, how does Dickens present Scrooge as an outsider to society? Oh, idiot. I'm an idiot, sorry. It should be, how does Stevenson present Hyde as violent and violent? I forgot to change that. I'm going to leave that in there. Okay, so this is the key element of the question. So let's pretend that says Hyde. Okay, ignore the Dickens and the Scrooge. It says Stevenson and Hyde. It's the same principle. The examiner will be looking at how you apply your knowledge of the novella, along with your analytical skills, to a specific question. This means that in every paragraph, you will be referencing how Hyde is presented and whether this representation portrays him as violent or not. The extract, you focus specifically on the extracts here. You should identify pieces of evidence that support the points you wish to make. So how is Hyde presented in this extract? Well, violent, dangerous, unpredictable. Evidence, flame of anger, storm of blows, audibly shattered as examples. And then the wider novella. Jot down some initial ideas about how Hyde is presented elsewhere. Look back to the previous screen for ideas and evidence that I've already done. Okay, now, how to structure your answer. There are two approaches you could take. The first is to write 4 detailed paragraphs, 2 based on the extract and 2 from the wider novella. Now, I've chosen to answer this question in this way, but certainly for my brightest students, I tend to encourage them to take on the second approach, which is to write 3 detailed paragraphs where you incorporate both the extract and the wider novella into each point. So as you're talking about Hyde as violent, or Hyde being referred to as the devil or Satan, then link it to other areas in the novella where that is also the case. But whichever approach you take, you need to structure each paragraph so that it contains specific elements the examiner will be looking for. To do this, you could or should use the following to help. Now, I'm not going to read through all of this. You can pause it and go through, but each paragraph should contain P to C. Now, you may have yours from school like Peel or PEAZ or Pete or whatever it is, but mine's P to C. Point, evidence, technique, explanation, reader impact and context. Now, context I've kind of set aside a little bit because it's only worth 6 marks, which is 20%, so it doesn't need to appear in every single paragraph. The second point there is tentative analysis. Top band, you're inferring, you're making interpretations, multiple interpretations, alternative interpretations. We don't know definitively what Stevenson's intentions were. We can only guess, surmise. Simply using words like perhaps or however will assist this, and it'll get you into the top band. So, and then a general summary at the bottom of how to analyse. Link, directed to the question. Quote to support, preferably embedded. Explain. So why have you explained there or justify the use of that quotation to support your point? Use terminology. Explore the effect on the reader and explore alternative meanings. So pause and have a read through that properly. Okay, so for this question, I've just jotted down a sample opening point. Okay, see if you may well be able to do better. I've pitched it about a grade 7, but I've incorporated every element that the examiner will be looking for. I'll read it. The impression we get of Hyde in this extract is simply that he seems to enjoy perpetrating mindless acts of violence, in this case meted out to a defenceless elderly gentleman minding his own business. The tone is set with the maid's revelation that she had previously conceived a dislike of Hyde, presenting Hyde in a negative light. In describing Hyde's walking cane as heavy, the mood takes on an increasingly ominous feel, foreshadowing later events, as we fear that this heavy cane may become a weapon. The use of ill-contained to describe Hyde's attitude to Sir Danvers Carew is the final piece of information given to leave us in no doubt that we are about to witness Hyde embark upon one of his impulsive acts of evil, freed as he is from the constraints of Jekyll's reputation within Victorian society. The bits in black are just identifying the P to C elements of the paragraph. So again, pause that, have a little reread through, anything you fancy, take a note of. And I've also come up with 4 additional points that you could make. You don't need to. You can pick 2 or 3 of these and run with them. So the way this reads is point, and then technique, if you like, in the middle, and then any context reference in that 3rd column on the right. So his sudden outburst portrays the horror and evil contained within his actions, great flame of anger, stamping, brandishing, and so on. That's a metaphor highlighting how dangerous his temper is, and the aggressive verbs reinforce the level of violence meted out to this elderly gentleman, no doubt shocking the reader. The maid describes the horror of these sights and their impact on her. She fainted. And this whole event is happening late at night on deserted Victorian streets. It has a very gothic feel to it. Remember, 18 months after this was written, Jack the Ripper was doing his worst on the streets of London. So there was a real climate or atmosphere for this kind of behaviour, or fear of this kind of behaviour rather. Another point you can make, Hyde embodies evil and is often described using animalistic terminology as some sort of violent, crazed beast relishing the brutality of the attack. Evidence clubbed, audibly shattered, storm of blows, incredibly mangled. This very graphic imagery portrays an uncivilized creature at work, reinforcing the notion of him as the representation of the evil side of Jekyll. Clubbed, as I've explained, has links to Darwin's theory of evolution and the beast that lies within us all. Also, Freud's id, our unconscious selves finding their original primitive self. Psychology was welcomed as a science in the 1880s. So, and Stevenson and Jekyll, his main character, were obviously fascinated by issues of the mind, which is what this novella is all about. Another point you can make, so I haven't got any context here because we don't need it in every paragraph. Throughout the novel, there are further examples of how Stevenson uses animal imagery to present Hyde, something abnormal in the very essence of this creature, trampled calmly, and then damned juggernaut as well. Range of techniques, simile, oxymoron, etc., used to frame Hyde as an outsider, an evil monster, marginalised by a very rigid Victorian society. And the final one I've got for you, Hyde also suffers comparisons with the devil, black sneering coolness, really like Satan. My devil had long been caged, he came out roaring. Contains religious significance as it implies that Hyde not only is going to hell, but that he belongs in hell. Jekyll himself acknowledges that although Hyde embodies evil, he is also a part of him that he had ignored for too long. The fact he came out roaring implied that he didn't waste time and chased after immoral experiences with the verve of someone making up for lost time. In fact, it wasn't long before Hyde started to become the more dominant aspect of Jekyll's character. Again, links to Darwin and how we all have a more primal aspect to our personalities, which has perhaps been suppressed through thousands of years of civilization, but nevertheless lies dormant within us all. And what's the message from Stevenson? Be careful about giving some oxygen to this, because once you let it out, you can't control it. And it didn't end well for Jekyll. Right, okay, that covers everything to do with that question. There's plenty there for you. Do have a viewer look over it again, pause as you need to. If there's a question you'd like me to focus on and you remember, then please just email me. If not a member, simply join up and then email me. I guarantee to answer any question you may have. Exam style questions may take a few days, but well worth the wait. Getting corny now and taking that whole corn to a whole new level. If you'd like me to tackle a specific question or a specific extract, then indicate what that extract is. So if it's from a particular text, different novel to Jekyll and Hyde, then just give me the opening line, so the chapter or act. Give me the opening line and the closing line of the extract and the question that you've been asked, maybe at school. And I will give it the Holleran treatment. That's me, Mr. H. I'll give it the Mr. H treatment it should be. Okay, guys, hope you found that useful, and do check over with Mr. H online and find a whole load of other videos to help you further. All right, bye now.